Hi, this is Mrs. Slater, and then in today's lesson we're going to talk about more applications of systems of equations. In this first example, we're talking about orange juice. We have 2 cans of juice drink, and we have 15% in one of the orange juice and 5% in the other. So we're going to take a mix of these together and then come up with 10% orange juice. So the best way to understand any kind of application is to understand the problem. So make sure you look at that last sentence. They're asking for how many liters of each should be mixed together. So that's going to tell you what your variables are going to be. So we'll have X be can number 1, and Y is going to be can number 2. Okay? And then to develop and carry out the plan, we are going to set up a box and put the different categories in them. It's something like that. And I'm going to put can 1 and can 2 over here on the right side. And then the percent that each one of them have up at the top, and the liters, and I'm going to have my total column, just to organize all the information given here. So can number 1 was 15% orange juice. Can number 2 was 5%, so that's going to be 0.05. And in total, they want to have 10% orange juice. So this is mixed together. They want it to be 10%, which would be 0.10. Okay, so then liters, we do not know how many liters, so this is where X and Y are going to be in the chart. But we do know we want it to be a total of 10 mixed together. Okay? And then as far as the total goes, how much from each can is going to be in the final product? It would be 15% of whatever was in can 1, and then 5% of what is in can Y. And if you multiply these last ones together, 0.10 times 10 equals 1, and that will help us solve the problem. Okay, now look at the setup. Look where we have our 2 systems showing up. Here under liters and here under total will give us our 2 equations, and we can solve for X and Y. So first of all, the liters. X plus Y equals 10. So we're trying to get as many liters from each as possible to get our 10% of orange juice. Then for the second part, we have 0.15x plus 0.05y equals 1. Okay, so now we can solve by systems, solve by elimination or substitution for the next step. Go ahead and push pause and try it. Okay, now it's time to check your work. I did do elimination method, so I got rid of the decimals. You didn't have to do this, and you can fast forward to the answer if you'd like. But this is the way I chose to do it. I changed them so there's no decimals, and then I multiply the top by -15, as you can see here. And I got this, added the 2 equations together, and I got y equals 5. So that means 5 liters from can number 2. And then after plugging it into one of the previous equations, I get 5 for can 1 as well. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Here we have 2 cars leaving town, traveling opposite directions. So this one's going in those 2 directions. One travels at 80 miles per hour, so we'll go ahead and give this guy the 80 miles per hour. And the other one is 96 miles per hour. And how many hours will they be 528 miles apart? Okay, so that's the understanding the problem. Now let's see if we can organize this in a chart. Alright, so we've got car number 1, and car number 2. We know that distance equals rate times time, so that's going to help organize our chart. Rate, time, distance. And it says that the rate of car 1 is 80 and the rate of car 2 is 96. It does say that they are leaving town in opposite directions, and it doesn't talk about the time, but they're saying that they leave in opposite directions. So the time we're going to leave with t, meaning the same time. The distance, we do not know how far. I mean, we know that the 96 mile per hour car is going to get there faster, but we don't know how much it's going to be fast. So we are going to call one of them X, like the distance from here to here that this car is going to go, we don't know. So we're going to call that X. And then we know the total has to be 528, so the distance from here to here has to be 528 minus X. 528 minus X. And that distance should total ought to be 528. So since that is done, the two equations that we're going to find, we can just write straight across. So we have 80 times t, because it's rate times time that equals distance, so that's why we're multiplying together, equals x. The next one we have is 96t equals 528 minus x. Now that is a system of equations, and substitution would probably be the best way to go here. So I'm going to take 80t and plug it in for x on the second equation. So we end up with 96t, 528 minus 80t, and then after adding that to both sides, we get 176t, and then dividing that by 176, you get 3. So t was hours, so it would take 3 hours for them to be 528 miles apart. On the next one, we have two planes traveling toward each other, and if they're traveling toward each other, and you can see that the cities, as it says, are 720 or 780 kilometers apart. Okay, and they're traveling at the rates of, we'll give this one 190 kilometers per hour, and this one's going to be 200 kilometers per hour, and they started at the same time, so that one's very specific. How many hours are they going to meet? Okay, so the chart is very similar to the last one, where we're going to have a rate, distance, or rate, time, and distance, and then plane number 1, and then plane number 2. Go ahead and put their rate in. We have 190, and we have 200. T is going to represent time because they left at the same time, and the distance will work the same exact way as before, where one of them is x, we'll talk about here to where they are meeting point, and the other one will give 580 minus x. Okay, and since rate equals rate and time equals distance, we're going to multiply them together. So here's going to be one equation, and here's going to be the other one. 190t equals x. 200t equals 780 minus x. And go ahead and push pause and solve. So go ahead and check your work with your substitution. Hopefully we got t equaling 2 hours, which means the time that they would meet would be 2 hours. Okay, so the last one. So for the last one, we have a brother and a sister, and we've got two different things going on. In this first sentence, it says Carlos is 8 years older than his sister. So C is going to be Carlos, and M we're going to use as Maria. It'll help with distinguishing between the two of them. Okay, so the first sentence, it says Carlos is 8 years older than Maria. So you would write it like that. And then the next equation is a little tricky, so you have to be careful here. It says 4 years ago, so this would be in the past. What would be their ages in the past? So Carlos, it would be 4 years ago, so you would subtract 4. Maria, 4 years ago, was in minus 4. So we have to take whatever their age is, subtract 4. Okay, now let's look at the sentence. It says 4 years ago, so that covers, these two things cover that. Maria, so we would start with M minus 4, because that's Maria 4 years ago, was, there's another way to just say is, or our equal sign, 2/3 as old as Carlos. So again, Carlos, 4 years ago, we have to put there as well. So those are our two equations. And again, the tricky part is the 4 years ago. If it was 4 years in the future, you would just use C plus 4 and C and M plus 4. So keep that in mind for future examples. All right, so I feel like substitution is going to be the best method here. If we take M plus 8 and plug it in for C in the following equation, it would look something like this. M minus 4 equals 2/3 M plus 8 minus 4. And then solve for the inside of the parentheses. We end up with M plus 4. And then distributing property would give us 2/3 M plus 8/3. And we continue by getting the M's on one side, so that's going to give us 1/3 M. And if I add 8/3 and add 4 to it, common denominator would give me a 12 on the top to give me 20/3 after adding them together. And then all I have to do now is multiply both sides by 3/1, because that's going to cancel out the numbers on the left, giving us 20 for the age of Maria. So Maria is 20 years old. Maria. And if Carlos is 8 years older than that, that means Carlos has to be 28 years older. Years old. And that is the answer to the question. All right, so I will see you tomorrow.